Facility, where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Hi, I'm Coach Lee Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I want to welcome you to the Engaged Employee Podcast. Our mission is to emphasize the relationship between the employee and the workplace with the goal of enhancing engagement levels to create a more productive and satisfying work environment. While many organizations strive to create a more engaging atmosphere, they often miss the mark by forcing connection with big team building events like axe throwing or escape rooms. Those activities only leave employees with a short-lived sense of belonging. Organizations may also try smaller and more suffocating events like happy hours or group birthday celebrations that their employees feel obligated to attend. As a social connections and business culture coach, I've found that to create a stable, engaged, and productive workforce, there needs to be a shift and focus from mandatory fun and manufactured connection towards building trust and authentic conversation. Join me and a guest as we dive into social wellness strategies for the individual employee, techniques for developing interpersonal relationships with coworkers, and even some approaches for leaders to enrich the overall organizational culture. The Engaged Employee Podcast starts now. Hello, welcome. My name is Coach Lee. My guest today is Kimberly Frey. Kimberly is a coach and consultant who uses her decades of experience to help individuals, businesses, and families alike. As a diversity, equity, and inclusion consult for businesses, she supports organizations in their work to have a more positive culture and climates that are inclusive for all. In her work as a life coach, Kimberly helps individuals better understand executive functioning, communication, relationships, and other soft skills in order to create and achieve both in their personal and professional goals and build a healthy life balance. Kimberly also provides advocacy services for families navigating the special education process for their students with disabilities. She is adamant about helping ensure special education students get the support they need to be successful in school. Today, our conversation will be focused on wellness for the company culture at large. Kimberly, welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's such a delight to have you here. We met so many months ago at um, a DEI convention, I believe. So
Mhm. It
it's
was.
really, yeah, it's really great to be able to have this real conversation with you because often I think when people think of DEI, they think of somebody as diverse as me, being a Black trans man. Wow, we need more of that in our life. But there's a group of people that are often overlooked and that are missing. So I'd be curious to know about that because you focus on that group. And before we get into that, though, it's uh, a little carrot for our listeners to listen on for. But can you tell us what it is that you do and how you got into it?
Absolutely. So I am an independent coach and consultant. I do a variety of services depending on if I'm working with individuals. I do life coaching in regards to building executive functioning skills, helping them achieve and create goals, creating life balance. For families, I do a lot of special education advocacy, making sure that families understand how to navigate the system and what their rights and responsibilities are and how to best advocate for their child to get the services they need. And then for businesses, I am a diversity, equity, and inclusivity coach and consultant, but my specialization is on disability access and really harnessing in on those people with non-visible disabilities that we often don't really talk about or maybe don't even understand, such as autism or ADHD or even a mental health diagnosis. So DEI is super important to everything I do. But disability, it intersects with every aspect that we traditionally think of when we think of DEI.
Absolutely. And that is a very good point. And I wonder how you get so passionate into this because I know that you have a passion for this kind of work. Can you tell us a story or an experience that you had that led you to this work?
So I actually started out as a special education teacher. I was a classroom teacher for over 20 years, and the majority of my career, I taught students with learning disabilities, autism, ADHD, mental health diagnosis, the very same kind of non-visible disabilities that I'm passionate about helping with in workplaces now. And over the years, here we are, 20 years later, and many of my students, they're adults, they're navigating the workplace and really understanding and realizing that the business spaces aren't as accessible as they need to be for people with disabilities to be able to be successfully employed. And so that's where I kind of made this shift. I wanted to keep helping in some way. This is the way kind of activity work that I did as a special education teacher in classes, and now taking it into workplaces and helping businesses understand that if they are adopting policies that are accommodating for one population, they're actually creating environments that are more positive in their culture and climate for everybody that works there, not just this, I'm doing this for somebody with a disability, but really you're doing it to benefit all of your employees.
Right. And we definitely don't want people to, and this is, you didn't mention this, but it's also, DEI is a checkbox to check. It's a checkbox to check. And we don't want to create a policy for people that really isn't beneficial or helpful because that ends up hurting the entire organization overall. And I'd wonder if you could share a little more about how you help or what is the real beneficial factor of incorporating some of these policies and how you might help companies incorporate these policies.
Sure. I think the biggest thing that I provide and like to provide for the businesses that I work with is understanding. Knowledge is power, and often there are things that are done just because we don't know to do any better. Even just thinking about non-visible disabilities, many people do not understand autism or ADHD, or even what it's like to live with a mental health diagnosis such as anxiety or depression. And so, even helping businesses build their understanding of how these different disabilities affect an employee is super important. Often, employees that are asking for accommodations, they're seen as being difficult or, wanting to like get away with something or have the bar lowered for them in some way. And so there is a lot of work that has to be done on why an accommodation is asked for or why we need to increase access in some way, and helping build that bridge between people with non-visible disabilities who are often afraid to even talk about it for fear of the stigma that's involved, for fear of being seen as a lesser than employee. I've had conversations with adults where they talk about, they revealed to their employer that they had ADHD or autism and were treated differently than they had been previously. All of a sudden, maybe responsibilities were given to someone else because they thought you couldn't handle it. The same with a mental health diagnosis, like revealing that you have anxiety and maybe you get panic attacks. Like some people don't even feel comfortable talking about that with their employer because they're going to be seen as not being able to do their job. And so how do we overcome that and really make workplaces accepting and inclusive for a very viable workforce that wants to work, that provides an amazing skill set, and is often overlooked and seen to not be as valuable in some ways.
Yeah, that is definitely a bit frightening to suddenly have a need for support and being told that you can trust these people who run this organization. They are in charge of your livelihood. They write the checks for you, and you go to them and you say, I need help in some way, and then have the rug pulled out from under you. You can no longer work at the capacity that we thought you were. They suddenly change their direction of their mind about how they're going to treat you. And so it has to be terrifying for the individual who's having this experience. I know that I want to do a good job, but I need some accommodation. And the person that, or the community or the company that we're supposed to be able to reach out to for that support says, oh, you're not capable now. We have to look at you differently. And what I hear you saying is you want to help companies not react that way, because it seems like it's a bit of a knee jerk, a reaction where people perhaps don't know better. They don't know what to do with this, so they just
Mhm.
kind of push it away. So what would you share with some of these companies who, because we're all humans at the end of the day, the people who are in these positions of power who are making these decisions for our company are ones who just perhaps don't know. And so what would you say? What would be if I'm a CEO or I'm a leader, I'm a manager in my company, what would you say to them to make it a little easier for that employee who is going to come to them with something that they don't know what to do about, a disability or something they don't know what to do?
That's a great question. And I think, the biggest thing, and starting with leadership, is building this culture of just being aware of our biases that do exist. I mean, everyone has them, right? But especially in regards to like ableism versus being disabled. Often the very first comment that somebody says when someone discloses a disability is, "You don't look disabled," and they're very well meaning with that, but
Mhm.
that's kind of one of the most hurtful things that you can say to somebody who has just shared with you something very, personal for them. And so it starts with that. How do we change our language to show that we're being more supportive? Not saying things like, you don't look disabled, or you did a
Mhm.
really good job on that considering, or
Ah.
you should be able to XYZ. Even just a simple statement like, well, you should be able to get out of bed and make it to work on time every day, could be hurtful for somebody who is struggling with depression. And really, some days that's actually not the easiest thing to do. So being a little
Absolutely.
more aware of the words that we use, versus saying like, oh, it was right there, I was blind, I didn't see it all along. Like, if you would, my rule of thumb I tell people is if you wouldn't say it in front of the person that has that disability, you probably shouldn't say it at all. you know um, and
Mhm.
that's kind of, I think, a great first step, and a simple step that we could try to just be more aware of the words we use and the language we have.
Absolutely. I like that so much because it sounds very invalidating when you say things like that. When it's said to me that you should be able to do, you don't look like you have, but I'm telling you, please believe the words that I'm sharing with you, that I'm not trying to get over you. I'm not trying to get anything. I'm, in fact, coming to you because I need your support so that I can do a good job at this company. And we both agree that we want me to do a good job, right? So, stay with me on this. Stay with me. Uh,
Exactly. Yes.
and so, with that said, I really had a great time in our conversation. I learned so much about what we can say and how hurtful it could be for someone if we're not validating those experiences, and how valuable it is and important it is to have and celebrate diversity without feeling like it's something that we have to do. It's really more beneficial to us. So I'd like to know, and I'm sure my audience would like to know, where can they find you? Tell us a little bit more about that.
I have mostly online is most of my stuff, but I do a lot of in-person events. I have a class, Adulting 101 Foundations for Success, that I offer both in person and online. And enrollment registration for that is usually ongoing, with new ones starting fairly frequently. So you can check it out on my website. I do have several lunch and learns that I am planning for the month of April, maybe end of March, but April is Autism Awareness Month, so trying to kind of coordinate with some activities there. And I often do free workshops for families at the local libraries, so you can kind of look at events on library pages and find me talking about all these things that I'm so passionate about. So yeah, and other than that, reach out through any of my information. I love partnering and collaborating with people. I love kind of building that message of, community. I think it's so important.
Absolutely. It is very, very important. Community, connection, collaboration. I'm here for it. I love that kind of thing. So if you're interested, you can find all the links in the show notes. She's on lots of social media as well. You can find her Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Kimberly Frey. You can find her in all those, but of course, you'll find links in the profile. Thank you again so much, Kimberly, for coming on to the podcast and sharing your experiences and your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Take care. There you have it, another insightful episode of the Engaged Employee Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the deep dive into the world of employee engagement, leadership, and workplace dynamics. The Engaged Employee Podcast is brought to you by the Patterns of Possibility, where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Before we wrap up, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible guests and, of course, our loyal listeners. Your support keeps us motivated to bring you valuable content each week. If you found today's discussion thought-provoking and want to learn more about how we can help you or your organization make more meaningful relationships, go to patternsofpossibility.com and book a friendly conversation with me. Or you can email me your questions at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. Stay connected with us and engage with fellow listeners by following the Patterns of Possibility on LinkedIn. You can also catch us on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop. And if you prefer the audio version, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us, and by subscribing, you'll never miss an episode. Thank you for being a part of our journey to create workplaces where passion meets productivity. Until next time, I'm Coach Lee. Stay engaged, stay inspired.